Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to remind you to tell all your friends, opening in theaters August 29th. Now it gives me great pleasure, first of all, to introduce the director of the film, Chris Weitz. Chris, right here. Thank you so much. And please, we're honored to have here Sir Ben Kingsley. Thank you both so much for being here, and thank you for this really important and moving film. You could grab them off the stand if you don't feel comfortable, however you prefer.
Oops. Is this on? Let's see.
Should be on.
Ah,
There you go.
I switched it on.
We always put one trick one out just to make sure. Let me start by asking, and this is a question really to both of you, of why you chose to make this film. Why did you choose to tell this story?
I'll go first. Begging Sir Ben's pardon. My father was a German Jewish refugee who left Berlin in 1933 when Hitler came to power, and he, as well as being a designer, he wrote biographies of prominent Nazis. So I grew up as his copy reader and research assistant. So I grew up immersed in these times. I didn't know very much about Eichmann, actually, other than received opinions, but when it was sent to me, it struck me as one of the things, if you're lucky, you get a chance to turn your mind to. So for me, it was second nature.
Sir Ben Kingsley.
I had this in my pocket throughout filming, and I think it answers your question and compelled me to join Chris. Let us tell tales. All the rest can wait. All the rest must wait. Let us tell tales. That is our primary obligation. Commentaries will have to come later, lest they replace or becloud what they mean to reveal. Let us tell tales so as to remember how vulnerable man is when faced with overwhelming evil. Let us tell tales so as not to allow the executioner to have the last word. The last word belongs to the victim. It is up to the witness to capture it, shape it, transmit it. That is the voice of Elie Wiesel. And when I last was with Elie, he signed his poem to me, and as a small exchange, I offered him that the next time I walked onto a film set that was appropriate to his story, his tale, that I would dedicate my performance to him. And shortly after that, my dear colleague Chris asked me to portray the man who nearly murdered Elie. And I said to myself, Elie, I shall do this for you.
Well, we have so much to learn from Elie Wiesel, and even today, especially today, I'd say, His messages continue to reverberate within our community.
And the world, I hope.
And the world and beyond. I wanted to ask you how you prepared for this role.
I had the enormous privilege of being telephoned by Simon Wiesenthal himself in 1988 when he asked me to portray him in the HBO miniseries Murderers Amongst Us. And so I spent months with Simon. I remember him putting his arm around me and saying that I was like a son to him. And I have to tell you that he was like a dad to me. Later on, I was invited by the great Steven Spielberg to join him in Schindler's List. And I remember rather like holding as a talisman Ellie in my pocket, I held a photograph of Anne Frank in my pocket during filming and used to say to Anne before every tough day in Poland, Anne, I'm doing this for you. And then shortly after Schindler's List, I played her dad, Otto Frank, in a miniseries dedicated to Anne Frank, the whole story. So finally, the golden thread that ran through all these extraordinary encounters with witnesses and survivors was my acquaintanceship, and I hope tiny friendship with Ellie, whom I had enormous affection and respect for. So I think my preparation was almost in my DNA by the time that Chris asked me to portray the perpetrator of these crimes and to give the enemy the face that it rightly should have and hold him up again to the world and possibly have him judged again by the world by saying, he did live. He was there. He did this.
Chris, you're approaching this huge story. How did you go about telling this? How did you, I know this is, which is rare for a big film like this, to have one writer. How are you balancing facts versus drama? Where do you see the reality in this?
I mean, I think the eventual reality has to be in the emotional experience of the audience as they watch it. Inevitably, a 2-hour film falsifies in as much as it condenses experience into an impossible narrative time frame. Fortunately, we were very well informed by our Mossad advisor, Avner Abraham, who is the man who put together the exhibition on Operation Finale, which is touring the world right now. So I think we are probably the best informed telling of this story that has ever been done. I felt a deep responsibility towards my departed father in terms of getting as many details as I could correctly. The other parts of preparation are, I mean, sometimes it's very simple if you can get Sir Ben to do this movie, you are already in tremendously good shape. Not only is he one of the greatest actors living, but as he's just spoken to, he has lived and thought through so many sides of this particularly resonant world tragedy. And a lot of it is getting out of people's way. I know that directors are really seen as like to see themselves as auteurs who are manufacturing what's going on, but in fact a lot of it is keeping traffic clear for the talents of other people to find their way through to the screen and to the audience, and so not to be too fussy about putting one's particular aesthetic or political point of view forward, but at the same time to be some kind of arbiter of taste in terms of the tone and themes of the film. You know, in some ways, my background is as a student of literature, and so to me, movies are about the way that we convey stories, as Sir Ben was talking about. to an audience. I think there's something quite sacred about the moment in which a group of people, some of them perhaps strangers, are sitting in a darkened room watching this on a big screen. I think there's something ritual and quasi-religious about it, and I take that very, very seriously. It's something that is going away these days. Everyone is watching things on small screens in private, but I think that to see things in this way is very special. And so I think about what it will take to bring about some kind of emotional experience like this. And that's my main concern.
Sir Ben, if I may ask, were there any? I mean, you really capture for me, especially when you see the actual footage of Eichmann at the end. Yet throughout, you were capturing him for me. Were there? How did that happen? Were there prosthetics involved? I feel like somehow you just captured his attitude, his way of being.
I have the great fortune of collaborating with possibly the greatest portrait artist living, Ralph Heinemann. And I took a leaf from his book because I could not allow Eichmann in. I know that may sound strange, but I decided to paint his portrait so that he was in the corner of my studio, my canvas was here, and he never got in. He got onto my canvas, but I washed my hands at the end of the day, put my brush down, and left him in the studio. There was a genuine separation between me and him. I could not be contaminated by him. It's completely counterintuitive to me to work like this, because I normally love the men I play, like Simon, like Otto, like Isaac, like Gandhi. I loved them. For me to exercise, it was a kind of odd revenge. I decided to exercise the same indifference towards him that he showed to his victims. So I didn't judge him. I was utterly, utterly indifferent to him. I was painting him. He meant nothing to me. But I wanted to get him down on the canvas, on the screen, into the camera. And Chris is the kind of uniquely gifted directors who will give the actor the right place to stand at the right time, in the right light, for the right reasons, and allow that actor to move the world. But it's only because of where he's placed or she's placed, and that's his great gift to us.
Thank you.
We would love to take some time for some questions from the audience. Be kind. We have a microphone. You know what I mean, right? We have a microphone being passed, and
Thank you.
we'll start right here.
Thank you so much for just an extraordinary film.
Thank you.
And this question actually could be for both of you, but I don't often get a chance to say Sir Ben, so I'd like to say that. My question is, during the making of the film, was there anything that came up for either one of you that changed your perception, that was revealed to you, that changed you in any way, particularly since it's a historical film and there's so much known, but perhaps something was revealed?
Well, I will say that for me, watching Sir Ben paint his masterpiece was revealing to me, in as much as I didn't know exactly who Eichmann was going to be. I mean, one likes to think that you go to the first day of shooting knowing exactly what it is that you want to get on camera, but I think that in the best circumstances, you trust an actor to live in his sort of natural abilities and arrive at something that can be surprising in a good way, and hopefully it should, because you want to be in some way manifesting something real and fresh, and not cliched, and not a received opinion. I was surprised at how much I saw Eichmann as a human being, And it's sort of difficult to say that because in some ways we would like to keep him as distant as possible as a monster. But I think in doing so, we would be doing something convenient for us, which is to say that ordinary people or ambitious people or careerist people might resort to these forms of elemental evil under the right promptings. And so I think that is part of, for me, and I don't want to speak for Sir Ben, but part of the strength of the portrayal. And I was, it's wrong to say delighted because that sounds celebratory, but I was very gratified at what I saw happening.
I think I can echo that in that I think to dehumanize Eichmann would be to let him off the hook. It would be slightly to fictionalize him. In fiction, the baddie is a monster, but in reality, this villain was a highly manipulative, dark intelligence that was a force that caused the death, aided the death of millions. And I think to make him less than human, unhuman, not one of us, would be to let history off the hook. So I was very grateful to Chris's guidance in making him a man, however deplorable, but a man amongst men.
Thank you so much. You know, as a child of an Argentine Jew and grandchild of Holocaust survivors, I grew up knowing this story, and I found it very interesting. And, you know, Cold War spy and the way you portrayed it really moved me. Like, I knew he was going to escape on that plane, and I was like, oh, shit. And the way you did it as a director and as an actor, bravo. My question is, when you were making this film, what, not liberties like falsehoods, but what liberties did you take in portraying the film as an actor and as a director?
Well, as a director, as I think I mentioned before, there's some compressions of time. For instance, the Mossad actually took quite a long while to respond to the information that they'd been given. I believe it was 2 years. Part of the reason was, as stated by Leo Raz's character, the real person, Issa Harel, was that they had much more pressing threats to their existence. Another reason was the sheer unlikeliness that a blind Holocaust victim's daughter would have been dated by the son of a mass murderer. But all of that, the strangest things in the story are actually true. The rest is conflation of different incidents. For instance, the Cyanim, the female helper who was tortured, she was actually tortured to death. That occurred shortly after the escape of the Mossad team as revenge. We have incorporated it into the sort of tense finale of the movie. But there is very little that is made up from whole cloth.
Oh, I didn't take any liberties. I learnt my lines and went on set and said them.
We have a question down here.
Hi, this is a question for Sir Ben. So I thought from myself, also as a 3G, a grandson of an Auschwitz survivor, I thought the most interesting part was when, as Eichmann, he starts to kind of turn the truth around and talk about how he was actually trying to save Jews. And I thought you portrayed that really amazingly. So I just wonder, how did you feel when you were playing that role, sort of twisting the truth? How did you kind of make that come alive?
Well, I think it was what gives me energy on set, if you like. What breathes life into a character is my sense of urgency. And if I feel that sense of urgency is lacking, then I can't really give my full collaboration and cooperation to the project. I have to sometimes. My accountant tells me I have to, so I do. But my sense of urgency was to, in a sense, put the man up again for trial. And it was that sense of urgency that gave me the energy to twist truth, to lie, to manipulate, because I know from history and from accounts of him that he was profoundly skilled at manipulating. So I felt that with every twist and turn my character took, I was adding just a little bit more detail to the portrait. And in a sense, it gave me a tiny taste of the kind of triumph the Mossad must have felt when they got him.
We have time for just one more question. So I wanted to ask, outside, you could all grab these. There are postcards from the production. Join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. This is a film that's asking the audience to continue the conversation. What is that conversation? What if you have one message that you want to bring audiences to take home with them and to continue a conversation with, what would that be?
For me, I would have to quote Ellie, let us tell tales. We cannot bury the truth. Let us tell tales. However painful, let us keep talking and telling these stories.
I mean, for me, I think that you hope that it's very difficult to sort of state the thesis of a movie, and if you could, you may as well have just tweeted it instead of actually spending all the time to make a movie. But you do hope that that people go into a dark theater, and when they leave, the furniture has been shifted a bit in their minds. And I suppose in a time of the great possibility of race hatred overtaking us, we might consider not that that Nazi Germany was a unique scenario, but that it is a bubbling up of, unfortunately, a grave possibility in human nature under certain circumstances. So the conversation, I think, then turns to what we'll do in a similar instance.
I want to thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
August 29th, you all know,